This episode of the Sara Carter Podcast is brought to you by the Tunnel to Towers Foundation. On 9/11, we vowed to never forget. Help America keep that promise. Donate $11 a month to the Tunnel to Towers Foundation at t2t.org. That's T, the number 2, T.org.
I got to tell you, I am so excited to have Congressman Devin Nunes here on the podcast today. Very excited to have him. I want to talk about the big spending bill, the fact that we may have a government shutdown, the fact that the Democrats want to basically hold us hostage. And that's what they've been doing. No, look, the Democrats, and I'm going to be talking about this in the monologue, not only do they want to hold us hostage with this crazy spending bill, the trillions of dollars, they talk about infrastructure, but they really don't care. It's about fundamentally changing our nation and the border. They're holding everybody hostage at the border because basically they're doing whatever they want. And I'm going to talk about how they have been able to succeed at this. And these are part of the questions that I'm going to be asking the ranking member of the House Intelligence Committee, Congressman Devin Nunes, who has been one of the few people out there. You know, I bring them here on the show, the people that are willing to fight the fight, the people that are willing to go out and take on big gov, even if they're a part of it. You know, we need to do things the right way. We need to fight from the inside. We need fighters on the inside that are willing to expose the rats and whatever else is going on in this swamp in Washington, D.C. Well, I'm actually right now in Texas. It's amazing here. It's like a breath of fresh air. I mean, I love, love, love Texas. Love this state. It's now my home. And I'm so excited. I'll talk to you a little bit about that and how crazy the last few days have been. I'm actually having to make a makeshift studio and everything I have is like falling apart. I couldn't find cables. You know, I'm like, oh my gosh, we've got Devin Nunes on today. I know he only has a certain amount of time. I can't find the cables. I've got boxes everywhere. I got to get my daughter registered for school. I can't find half the documents. It's like crazy. No matter how hard you try to prepare for a life-changing move, it never works out the way you think it was going to work. You could spend hours like writing every detail on the outside of the box. The guy that you spent way too much money moving your stuff here, those guys, they're just going to put it wherever. They're just going to be like, I'm so tired after lifting your heavy couches. I get it. And they're just going to put your boxes wherever. You might have to go into the garage, dig underneath like 20 of them just to find the school supplies. It's been crazy. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about that because I know you have been there. Also, let's talk about how President Biden and the Biden administration have literally demonized our Border Patrol agents and our law enforcement officials. It's completely unacceptable. It's actually really frightening to me because when you have an administration that is so anti-law enforcement, so anti-rules and regulations, when you have, look at the state of California, guys. Look at what's happened in California, such a beautiful state. The state, yes, in which Congressman Devin Nunes resides, it's a mess. It's a mess. You go to San Francisco, you're walking over people. You're going to LA, you're walking over people on the sidewalk. People have literally put homes on the sidewalk in tents. They're telling everybody else what to do. I remember when I was there in LA talking to the sheriff, and he's looking at me and he's saying, Sara, look, I mean, I can't even fight City Hall. I'm doing everything I can to fight them, and they're letting things just go haywire. You got people shooting up heroin on the streets. You got people defecating on the streets. You have DAs, these district attorneys that are allowing people to like basically just walk into CVS, Walgreens, whatever store, steal up to $900 without even fear of being prosecuted. That's what happens when you have a lawless society. And you got to ask yourself this question. Why is the Biden administration pushing everything in that direction? What are they fundamentally trying to change in our country? You know, I mean, I literally believe there is like this new form, not historical, but a mixture of all these neo-Marxist, fascist ideas, and they're percolating inside the Democratic Party. We're going to talk about that, and I'm going to talk about it with Congressman Nunes as well. Look, please follow and subscribe. Get all the links at saraacarter.com. That's saraacarter.com. And while you are there, please sign up for our email list so that you don't get shadow banned, right? We don't need that anymore. I just have to stop right there for 1 second. Think about what has happened over the last 6 years especially since President Trump, since before he became president, that year before, the disinformation campaigns, it's been like information warfare across the board. This is what I'm talking about. This is why it's so important that we not become a state where we silence the voices of those in opposition, where we allow the government to control us and to control who we are, our thoughts, or what we, or not even allow us to question anything. That's why it is so important, guys. That's why I have Congressman Nunes on the show. Look, now is a critical time to be vigilant in the defense of our freedom. And there is no better way than to do what? Than by joining the Association of Mature American Citizens. That's AMAC. I love AMAC. AMAC is a great sponsor of the show. Why? Because one, they believe in fighting the good fight against overexpansion of the government, especially what we've seen, reckless government spending. This is why the Republicans are now fighting, so is AMAC, against this ginormous bill that's going to transform our country and not even do much for us. It's about helping small businesses. It's about securing our borders, supporting our military, and respecting our veterans. We stand for the flag and we believe in kneeling before God. So does AMAC, okay? By joining AMAC, you're taking the first steps to saving the America you love. AMAC offers an alternative to just about every benefit that other group offers, but without the liberal agenda, guys. I stand with AMAC. I hope that you will too. I encourage you to join amac.us/Carter. That's amac.us/Carter. The benefits of membership are great, but the cause is even greater. Join today at amac.us/Carter. Okay, right off the top, I want you to hear the partial truth that is now coming out of the Biden administration. This is DHS Homeland Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas. I am half Cuban. I can't believe he's Cuban. I'm just like, Alejandro, you got to go back. This guy is he's terrible. He is just terrible. I want you to hear him. He gets caught up and has to explain how many Haitians they've actually just let go into the country and how few of them have been flown back to Haiti. Listen to this.
To answer my question directly, of the 17,400 that weren't deported back or didn't return on their own to Mexico, how many of them first, how many have been released into the U.S.?
They're released on conditions,
yes.
and approximately, I think it's about 10,000 or so, 12,000.
Have been released?
Yes.
And of the 5,000 that are still in process?
We will make determinations whether they will be returned to Haiti based on our public health and public interest authorities.
So are we talking about a total of 12,000, or could it be even higher?
It could be even higher.
You guys, I love how Wallace got him to say this. It's Chris Wallace with Fox News. Think about what Alejandro Mayorkas was saying. Look, I'm not saying that they should be returned, because obviously Biden opened the border and isn't sending anybody back. They're lying about Title 42, which was the Remain in Mexico. They want to get rid of that too. They're just opening the borders wide open. They're just letting everyone walk in. They're making you get your shots. You could lose your job if you don't get your COVID-19 vaccine. They're forcing you to do everything their way, but they're not doing that when it comes to the border. There's no security at the border. There's no real health care assessment for any of these folks at the border. Now, if they're feeling sick, if they look ill, then the Border Patrol, of course, and our first responders or law enforcement get them to a hospital, they get them checked out. But trust me on this. I have spent the whole last week in Del Rio with the Haitian migrants, and it was a horrible situation there for them. I got to tell you, nobody would want to live like that, except for people that are trying to get into the United States of America, because we are the greatest nation on earth. But for how long? Before this administration and others just tear it apart? We really have to look at what is happening, folks. That border is a national security disaster. It is a healthcare crisis. It is a humanitarian disaster. It is every type of disaster that you can imagine. I am telling you, I am there. I see what's happening. And what's even more frustrating is that this administration consistently lies about it. They are consistently lying to you. And they're doing so because they control a mass media apparatus. They really do. What I talked about at the top of the show, right? Information warfare. This is about disinformation campaigns. The way this administration, and by the way, even under the Trump administration and previously, and I'm talking about the swamp, I'm not talking about the people that wanted to make a difference. The people within the Trump administration that worked with President Trump to enact secure border laws that were trying to protect Americans and putting America first. I'm talking about those people in the swamp, the bureaucracy that works diligently to ensure that we're not first, that has been working diligently to break down our system, that has been working diligently to stampede the Constitution of the United States. Those are the people that I'm talking about. The people that don't care about our freedom. People like Governor Gavin Newsom in California, destroying California. Look at what's happened in New York. Look at what's happening across our country. It is terrifying. It is terrifying. And when you see what this administration is doing, when you see if they've just broken everything apart and then they just consistently lie, and those lies are backed by a media that does not care to tell the truth, because why? Fundamentally, the majority of the media is the left. They're Marxist in ideology. They're socialist in ideology. I believe we should help every single person that we possibly can help. We should not treat any group different than any other group, but we do it legally. We have a legal process. What about all the people who legally applied for citizenship? All the people that are waiting right now for their P2s in Afghanistan, or others, SIVs, special interest visas, who served our country? What about all the children being trafficked by the drug cartels? Are we just now trafficking children? Are we saying that's okay? How is this okay, folks? How is this okay? How is it okay that we are doing this? I'm going to tell you right now, it is not okay. And when he says we're debating whether or not, some of them will be sent back and there's a process, let me tell you what that process is. There's a first process, which is now notice to report. They give them like a little piece of paper saying, hey, notice to report. And then they just let people go. Nobody's going to report. Nobody's going to show up. And then they might give them a notice to appear. Notice to appear means if they even decided to report, because they should be giving them notice to appear, which means that they should be appearing in the court. They just don't have enough resources to do that. So now they give this whole other little thing, this bureaucratic little piece of paper, says notice to report. Nobody reports to their whatever, to the ICE agent in their cities. And even if they do, they know they might get kicked back. So they won't overall, unless they have a really good claim of asylum. And most people just never even show up in court for the notice to appear. So it doesn't even matter if they have a warrant out for them. They don't care. They're just going to do whatever they can to not go back, wherever that is. Some of these people are not from Haiti. I told you originally they were, but they've spent the last 4 or 5 years in Bolivia, Chile, Ecuador, wherever they had landed and got asylum first. That's why a lot of them are dumping their identification cards. There's been a lot of ID cards found out along the border in Del Rio. A lot of those cards will say Bolivia, Chile, have the person's face on it. They may be Haitian, but they're no longer in Haiti. They didn't come because of the earthquake or because of poverty in Haiti. They may have come because of poverty in Chile or Ecuador or wherever, or Colombia, but not because of what was going on in Haiti. A good majority of them spoke perfect Spanish and were very kind to me and spoke to me and talked to me a little bit about what they were doing and how they got here. But that's the truth. You deserve the truth. They deserve the truth. Our law enforcement officials deserve the truth. Let's talk about that, because President Biden basically accused the Border Patrol agents of strapping migrants, of whipping migrants, of being racist, and that they're going to pay I was out there all week. I have been covering the border since some of you are in diapers, if I've got young people there. But a long time, 2003, 2004. I know this border well. I know a lot of the agents there. There are the first responders, really, for the people that are crossing the border. There's so many times I've seen agents put everything on the line, to save a child's life, to save someone's life. And I want you to think about that. And then you have a situation like this. And I'm not saying there aren't bad apples somewhere in the world, but this was not one of them. And this situation was not one of it. I want you to hear President Biden, and then I'm going to respond to it quickly. Listen to what President Biden says about the Border Patrol right here, and I'll explain why it's so dangerous.
You said on the campaign trail that you were going to restore the moral standing of the U.S., that you were going to immediately end Trump's assault on the dignity of immigrant communities. Given what we saw at the border this week, have you failed in that promise? And this is happening under your watch. Do you take responsibility for the chaos that's unfolding?
Of course I take responsibility. I'm president, but it was horrible what to see, as you saw. To see people treated like they did, horses barely running them over, people being strapped, it's outrageous. I promise you those people will pay. They will be, an investigation underway now, and there will be consequences. There will be consequences. It's an embarrassment, but it's beyond an embarrassment. It's dangerous. It's wrong. It sends the wrong message around the world. It sends the wrong message at home. It's simply not who we are.
I got to tell you, that was distressing. First of all, there is an investigation underway. Secondly, every eyewitness that was there, including the photographer that took that photo, said that there was absolutely no whipping of the agents. There was no strapping of the agents. The agents were in an area, I'm very familiar with this area of the Rio Grande River, where they were trying to clear the area. So there were a lot of migrants crossing, right? A lot of migrants coming across this area. In fact, 15,000 of them. The agents were told, we need to move the migrants upriver so they can cross upriver, because that area in particular was where the Border Patrol agent launches their boats. So Border Patrol agents launch their boats from that particular area. They go out into the water, and a lot of times it's used for rescues. So if people are coming across the river, they drown, the agents need to be able to get there to save their lives. They couldn't do that. They couldn't put boats at that launching pad. And these horses, by the way, they're trained on them for months at a time, 6 months plus. These agents are trained on these horses. But a lot of these horses aren't really trained for, like you see in New York City or Chicago, even though they kind of operate the same way, which is like against huge groups, right? And so these horses were just as distressed as the riders, were just as distressed as the people crossing the river. Everybody was kind of being, where they were moving people upriver. There were people that were not listening to the Border Patrol agents. In fact, in one of the photos, you can actually see where one of the Haitian migrants is getting ready to grab the bridle and then pull on the bridle. That is extraordinarily dangerous. Extraordinarily dangerous because it can pull the whole horse down. The horse can fall on the migrant, can fall on the Border Patrol agent, and it can kill him because these horses weigh thousands of pounds. Imagine 1,000 pounds falling on you, right? In the river. So it's already a stressful situation. And the agents did their job. They have what they call, long reins. And when you use them, it's split rein. So they're long and you split them apart. You can put them together. And it's so that the agents can get on and off the horses quickly. It's also part of their training. They spin the rein sometimes to give distance between both the person and the horse, because they don't want whoever they're going to apprehend going after the horse. And it kind of says, okay, you got to clear the space here. But nobody was whipped. But think about what's happened to our Border Patrol agents over the last several years, and our law enforcement agents and our federal agents. And, I can go on and on and on. Our state police, our local police. We have seen people targeting them. We have seen people targeting them for years now. And it is completely irresponsible of President Biden, and he should be absolutely ashamed of himself, to make statements like that without any facts or evidence and putting our law enforcement officials in such a dangerous position. If the president feels that way about law enforcement with nothing, with no criminality occurring, nothing at all happening, he's basically saying that these agents, these Border Patrol agents who did nothing wrong, by the way, their horses, I got to tell you, I was telling Sean, we were standing there, it looked like the horses were in jail. You know, it looked like, I mean, they're literally calling these horses racist. And you have like Vice President Kamala Harris saying it evoked visions of slavery. I've seen them do the exact same thing on horseback with Guatemalan migrants, with anybody. Could be Romanians, could have been Chinese, Russian, whoever crosses the border. This terrain is rough. It doesn't matter what color your skin is. If the Border Patrol is patrolling that area of the Rio and they are on horseback near the river and up and down those rocky terrain and they're trying to move people, and especially a large group of people, or they're in the process of apprehending someone, it doesn't matter what color you are. They did not do that for that reason. It really is disgusting. It's really actually very frightening. Like I said, something that should not have happened. The president should not have made those statements. There is an ongoing investigation. I'm 100% positive, based on the people that I've spoken with and my sources, they will be cleared. I want you to listen to this really quick. This is Mayorkas. He's gaslighting even more by saying the horrible thing that never happened is evidence of systemic racism.
In the midst of meeting these challenges, we, our entire nation, saw horrifying images that do not reflect who we are, who we aspire to be, or the integrity and values of our truly heroic personnel in the Department of Homeland Security. The investigation into what occurred has not yet concluded. We know that those images painfully conjured up the worst elements of our nation's ongoing battle against systemic racism.
I got to tell you, it's just crazy. He's basically saying, okay, that didn't happen, but these are horrific images and is proof of systemic racism. No, there is not systemic racism. The only racism in this country is right there on Pennsylvania Avenue in the White House. The most, really overt racist president that I've ever heard. He made fun of people working at 7-Eleven. He has said, things like, if you don't vote for me, you ain't black. Nobody has held that guy, President Joe Biden, accountable for all of his crazy statements, some of which are very racist, right? Some of which are very racist. I don't see that racism, that systemic racism that he's talking about. I just don't see it. What I saw were Border Patrol agents every single night that were on horseback, where little kids would come running out of that makeshift refugee camp in Del Rio. And I took pictures of it, and they were asking questions and, asking if they could pet the horse, or what does this horse do, or what's his name? Kids as young as 3 or 4. I saw men in uniform, our Border Patrol agents, working there with the Haitians in the worst heat and the worst conditions you can imagine, with no real restrooms, just some porta potties, people getting sick. There were a number of women that are Border Patrol agents and the state troopers, as well as the Texas Department of Public Safety, had to rush to the hospital. There were babies born in that group. And unfortunately, and really tragically, because of the heat and because of the horrible conditions that so many of these people have had to travel through, there were women that actually lost their children. Okay? So this is a tough situation on everybody all the way around. Look, I don't want to take up all of the time that I need to have with Congressman Devin Nunes. He is going to talk to us about everything. I know you're all looking for updates on John Durham. What does this mean with Sussman being indicted? Will justice finally be served? I'm going to ask him about that. I'm going to ask him about this crazy spending bill, the trillions of dollars in revamping America into some kind of socialist state. That's really what it's all about. Let's talk to him about everything we can get to. But before we get to that, I want you to know about the best steak and the best bacon, best chicken, best salmon that you will ever eat. It won't come from a grocery store, guys. It will not. It'll come to your front door. You'll only find it on the family farm and caught by independent Alaskan fishermen. That's if you get that salmon. It's so good. That's why you need moinkbox.com. Their animals are raised outdoors. Their fish swim in the wild ocean. The moink meat is free of antibiotics, hormones, sugar, and all of that other junk you will find in pre-packaged meat aisle. You don't want that. You don't want that in your kid's body. You don't want that in your body. If you can live without it, get moinkbox.com/Carter to get a year of bacon for free. I want you to think about that. Moink, MOINK box.com. If you put /Carter, you'll get a year of bacon for free and then pick up what meats you want delivered in your very first box. Change what you get each month and you can cancel anytime, right? You can do it. I mean, I get it here. Move to Texas. Think about it. You get fresh meat right at your door. You don't have to worry about going to the grocery store, especially in the heat. You don't have to worry about driving home in the heat with the meat right there. You got the meat right in a box. It's cold. It's chilled. It's going to go right into your freezer and you're going to have fresh meat for your family without any hormones. I want you to join the Moink movement today. Go to moinkbox.com/Carter right now. And listeners get this show, get a free year of bacon, right? You get free bacon for a whole year. That's 1 year of the best bacon I promise you will ever taste. But it's only for a limited time. Spelled MOINK box.com/Carter. That's moinkbox.com/Carter. You guys won't regret it. And without any further delay, Devin Nunes. First of all, thank you so much, Congressman, for joining me here today on the Sara Carter Show, just because I know you have been extraordinarily busy. Right before you got on, we were just talking about it. I mean, you've been working so much. You haven't even been home for several weeks, right?
I've been gone a couple of weeks. Hope to be home in about a week from now.
Oh, wow.
So I don't like to be gone from home, but sometimes you got to do it. It's part of the job.
That's absolutely true. And part of that job is this new spending bill, right? And the possibility is looming that there will be a government closure. Can you tell us where we're at on that and what's happening?
Yeah, there's a series of things happening here in the swamp that I think a lot of people don't realize that are all kind of cascading all at one time. So on Thursday of this week, September 30th, the government runs out of money. That's number one. Number two, we've already hit our debt limit, so the debt limit has to be increased by the Congress if we're going to keep borrowing and spending money. Of course, the Republicans have said, no way until you stop all the madness are we going to do this. Even the Senate, House and Senate Republicans both have that position. So that's number two. Number three, you have the huge infrastructure package that they want to get done, which they claim they're going to either, at first they were supposed to start it on Monday today. Mm-hmm. Or they were going to and pass it, but now it looks like it's going to probably linger through the week.
And this is trillions of dollars. This is not.
Well, that's 1.2 trillion, and people argue over that number.
Right.
But the final one is what I call the Socialist Blowout program, and that is this. They say $3.5 trillion. They say it's paid for. We actually calculate it to be closer to $5 trillion. And it's not just a spending package. That's what I keep telling people. Like, it's not just the money. The money's bad enough that they're going to borrow, but they're going to raise taxes across the board on everyone. And they're going to play favorites to states, to blue states, for example, will be one of their goals, where they give better tax breaks to blue states. Also, it'll be attacking American-made energy unless you produce electric cars. So it's a major socialist advancement. And, we've seen this movie before.
Right.
And back in 2009, Obama, and this is the one thing I want to make sure that that people understand, Obama said, oh my God, the economy's cratering. It's all Republicans and Bush's fault. I need $800 billion. People may remember that $800 billion because it led to the cash for clunkers and all types of corruption. Most importantly, that money was used to buy votes in the Congress that led to the passage of Obamacare.
Exactly.
And the key thing for people to remember, this is the same play call made by the same people. Remember, they already passed $1.9 trillion, and they said, oh, it's COVID, we have to have it. Well, no, it wasn't COVID. It's actually money that is sitting there for Biden to use over the next 3.5 years. And I promise you right now what's going on, because they don't have the votes for anything here. They don't have the votes in the House because they can only lose 4 and they can lose 0 in the Senate. So they are using that $1.9 trillion that they lied to the American people about, supposedly be about COVID, to grease the skids to pass and merge all this garbage into one. Somehow they're going to have to try to get it all done this week. Now, I don't think they'll be successful in all of it, but I do think a lot of it they will get done. They may have to wait on the Senate because the Senate has said already they're not going to go for what in the House they call $3.5 trillion.
Right.
Manchin and others have said they'll only do $1.5 trillion. So I know that's a lot of moving parts there, but you asked me what's going on. That's what's going on.
You don't think they can get Manchin to move? They're going to need at least 10 Republicans, if I'm right, to break that vote and to pass this spending legislation, or am I wrong there?
Yeah, two different issues there. So they need, because they passed a procedural move on the budget, they only need 50 in the Senate with Kamala Harris breaking the tie. Now, that was using an archaic process that's supposed to be for budget reduction. And if you may remember, we used that back in 2017 and 18 to pass the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. And what we said at the time is, look, it's going to increase revenue to the government. Even though we were going to cut taxes, lower taxes across the board, it was going to raise money for the government. And indeed, it did. We were bringing in more money until COVID hit than we've ever brought in the history of this country, more tax revenue. These guys are actually going to do the opposite. They're going to raise taxes, claim it's going to raise the revenue, but we all know it's never going to work, because what they're doing is they're encouraging industries that, quite frankly, don't work, that actually, like the green energy nonsense.
Right.
They rely on China to produce a lot of those products. And at the same time, we're going to be in the same place we were when you raise the corporate tax rate up. What that does is it makes other countries more competitive. So we would actually have a higher corporate tax rate than China. So you can see that U.S. corporations will be looking, especially those that do international business, will once again be looking to relocate outside the United States. So it's absolute madness, but this is what we're dealing with.
Well, this is the economy this is like the border on steroids right now. That's what they're going to do to our economy. They're basically undercutting the American worker, undercutting all of Trump's policies as far as putting America first, and turning it over to enemy states like China and Russia, and then telling our workers, oh yeah, we'll give you some benefits if you do things like, windmill energy, or what we saw with Solyndra in the past under Obama, right, where it completely failed and imploded on itself. Let's talk about something else that's just as, for me, just as important, if not more important, because of the upcoming elections. And that would be looking at Twitter, looking at Facebook, our freedom of speech issues, the fact that we've seen these social media companies, and you've been probably one of the biggest fighters against what I consider is serious overreach or some sort of weird fascism that's occurred when they've become bedfellows with the Democrats. What's going on now? I know you got some breaking news on your lawsuit. And what do you see as far as the 2022 midterms and 2024 if we can't change the trajectory of Twitter and Facebook and Instagram and all of these social media giants, tech giants, so powerful?
It's funny you would mention it that way, because when I've been out on the road. I've been out on the road helping to recruit candidates, helping to speak to conservatives around the country, helping to raise money for the party and for our candidates, and then coming back and forth to Washington. That's why I've been gone. And you bring up a very good point, because although things look really good for us, we have great candidates. We're getting candidates at a record speed, and we are also actually raising more money. So unlike 2010, when we didn't control the White House, we didn't control the Senate, we didn't control the House, we're actually right now out raising the Democrats. Now, of course, they've got dark money and billionaires and all that sort of thing. But what I warn people about is that we've seen a sea change. So it's not just that there's fake news, that 95% of the media is controlled by the left and they produce left-wing narratives for the betterment of the Democratic Socialist Party in this country. But on top of that now, since the 2016 election, you've seen big tech come in and not only spend huge amounts of dark money, but they've been censoring. And that's the point that you're making. And that's my concern that I've laid out for all of my colleagues, that we can't get cocky and be assured that we're going to have a different outcome than the 2020 election, because if we can't meet those those voters that are in the middle, those independent voters who don't really know. They know something's going on at the border, but they don't know a lot about it. They kind of just want to go about their life. They want to go to their kids' soccer games. They want to watch football on the weekends, and they don't like politics. That's the electorate that makes up, at the end of the day, they decide the elections. Well, what Facebook, Google, YouTube, Twitter, what they're all doing is they decide what gets promoted and what doesn't, and what actually gets censored. The best example of that is the Hunter Biden laptop from hell that disappeared. The story came out, New York Post, but nobody could find it on social media. And if you posted it somewhere there, it got taken down immediately. So this is a neo-Marxist party that's being funded by a bunch of oligarchs, these tech oligarchs. They're tech tyrants. And they have the ability, and they brag about it, they have the ability to sway voters. And so if we don't have a place to discuss our ideas openly and freely, number one, we're going to have a disjointed conservative and moderate movement, independent movement, that's going to be disjointed without having all the facts. And number two, we're not going to be able to reach those independent voters that decide the election. So this is a tremendous problem. It's why I've encouraged everybody to go to Rumble. Because it's a video platform. It's critical. It's working. It's growing. Then, of course, Parler, which got nuked after January 6th, even though if they were actually telling the truth, they should have taken Facebook and all those off the internet, because Parler had nothing to do with what happened with the riots that happened at the Capitol on January 6th. But they destroyed that platform, even though nearly 20 million of us were on it. So it's going to be critical for us to have, and Parler is a platform that's kind of a combination of Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. And we're going to have a social media delivery mechanism. So I'm glad that Parler's back up. I see you posting on there, Sarah. I'm posting on there. But they had to build back from scratch because Bezos and Amazon decided to shut off their servers after the January 6th riot. So they destroyed that company. So anyway, every time I get the chance, thanks for asking, I want to make sure that people understand how critical it is for us to get back on and exclusively use these platforms that are not going to censor us.
Absolutely agree with you. And it's so tough. It's so tough, Congressman, because so many people are like, I want to use them, but I don't feel like I'm getting the word out. I don't feel like they're as user-friendly. And I'm saying, look, we have to start somewhere. We have to start somewhere because you can't be under the control of Twitter, Facebook, and all these social media giants. And you brought up, this neo-Marxist movement. That's what really worries me. What really worries me is that in Congress, and I know, you have been battling this, Senator Blackburn has been after him, Tom Cotton and so many others on the Senate side. And then on the congressional side, it's Jim Jordan, everybody else is talking about this, and Andy Biggs. But these companies kind of run with impunity. They don't really have anyone holding them accountable. Speaking of which, that's how Durham just finally prosecuted someone, and we all know is Sussman, the attorney for Hillary Clinton. They were all, and still I think a good majority of them, have been operating with impunity as well. They lose their jobs, but they're making millions of dollars as contributors on CNBC or NBC or MSNBC or CNN.
Or in some cases, they actually get hired by these big tech companies.
That's it. Lisa Page, right? Lisa Page.
All of the FBI officials and DOJ officials that were involved in the Russia hoax, Russia Gate, seem to somehow land on their feet and actually get better jobs and make more money. So look, I'm glad that Durham has done what he's done. My biggest concern now, and I said this yesterday on Maria Bartiromo's Fox News show, Sunday Morning Futures yesterday, I said this very clearly, that the number one thing people need to be talking about out there, if you care about getting to the bottom of the Russia hoax and holding people accountable, is to make sure, if you have a Republican senator or Republican House member, that you're weighing in to make sure that this investigation doesn't get shut down. Because we know by what the Attorney General, the goofy arguments that he's been making in court, whether it's on eviction moratorium notices or on the border issues, this is a political hack. He's very, very dangerous, and I'm sure he's doing everything he can to shut down the Durham investigation. So we got to make sure, even though we don't control anything here, we have to make sure that that Republican officials around this country are all weighing in to make sure Durham doesn't get shut down, or else he's never going to get to finish his
Do
investigation.
you feel beyond the core group that was focused, like with you, with everybody on the congressional side and those on the Senate side, even like Senator Lindsey Graham, who were focused on what was happening with the Russia scandal, which I think is probably one of the biggest modern political scandals in our nation's history. I think that when people look back 100 years, 50 years from now, they're going to discover so many more things that never even went public, right? And they're going to say, boy, the nation was on the verge, if it's not on the verge right now.
Yeah, and look, Sarah, what you and John Solomon were on the forefront of this, because what they do, and it's basically laid out in the Durham indictment of Sussman, is it's really a textbook example of how they build a fake news narrative. They create a controversy that's fake and phony. They have a bunch of news stories sprinkled around that they created by fake news reporters, and then they were feeding them, in this case, into our own government, so that all of a sudden it makes it look real. Oh my God, Trump must have something to do with Russia, and they got so far out of whack that they actually opened an investigation during a presidential campaign on completely made up phony nonsense. And that's
we would go to jail for. We would go to jail for that. We would, you and I would, but they don't. They're making millions of dollars. I think that's why the American people are so angry, Congressman.
Exactly. And that's why I said, for those of you who care, that are out there watching or listening to this right now, call your congressman, Republican, because Democrats aren't going to listen. And if you have a Republican senator, Republican congressman, call them and say, make sure that this Durham investigation does not get shut down, or else. And look, there's much larger ramifications here for the Department of Justice and the FBI. If Durham doesn't get to conclude and doesn't hold these guys accountable and bring them to justice, you're going to have generations, not just one generation. You're going to have, and that's to your point, as history goes forward, you're going to see the credibility, as if it can't sink any farther. It will sink farther if this investigation is shut down, in terms of what the American people think and how much they trust the Department of Justice and the FBI and other government agencies.
I agree with you wholeheartedly. Before I let you go, I want to get to the border really quick. You're the ranking member on the House Intelligence Committee. I thought you did an incredible job as the chairman of that committee. I look at the border. I've been here in Del Rio for the past week. I've been on the border for the past 6 months. What, in your assessment, is the biggest national security threats we are facing? And how do you assess what is happening here on the border? Because fundamentally, I'm seeing an administration that is changing our country in so many fundamental ways that it's damaging it. And I feel irreparably. I just feel that there's something going on here that we are not seeing. And I don't know if you have an assessment of what's happening.
You may remember, you and I were down at the border just a few months ago at the McAllen border crossing. And, it's clear now that, they tried to do another fake news narrative on this Haitian issue. And they released some video of some planes taking off, supposedly taking them, back to Haiti, I guess. And then what ultimately comes out is, no, in fact, almost all of them are now out in the United States somewhere. Nobody knows where the hell they're at. And it's totally unacceptable. So, you're talking about, my estimations are we're going to let 3 million people into this country this year. And it's completely out of control. And at the same time, they stopped building the border wall. And it's totally ridiculous that we're having to deal with this. And the only thing that it really leads one to believe is that this, because they just lie about it all the time, they lie what's happening, because Trump basically at it, for the most part, the illegal immigration was narrowed down to people that were trying to get in this country to do really bad things, drug cartels, drugs, that sort of thing. But people knew they weren't under Trump. You weren't just going to be able to bring some kids, claim asylum, and get in, because it was the Remain in Mexico policy. So they're basically, this is like the Baghdad Bob administration. This is like Baghdad Bob is in every nook and cranny of the Biden administration, and they just lie and they say things that aren't true. So because of that, the only thing that you can surmise from it is that they're trying to change the electorate in this country. They're just trying to let everybody in, because they know 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years from now, they're going to fit into their category of their cult-like madness about white supremacy. Hey, you're this color, you're that, you're this letter, you're clearly a socialist Democrat like us, so make sure you and your kids vote with us. So that's what they're trying to do here. There's no other explanation for it because it's so dangerous, right? I mean, they get out there and tell us, you all got to be vaccinated.
Exactly.
Like today, Biden's getting his booster shot, right? And even though they lied about that a few weeks ago, and they're telling everybody, if you don't get a vaccine, you're not going to be able to get a job in this country. And then they're telling you, wear a mask when, we catch them time and time and time again. When they don't want to wear a mask, they don't wear a mask, right? When Pelosi wants to get her hair cut, she doesn't have to wear a mask.
Vice President Kamala Harris, same thing.
Kamala Harris, the Obama birthday super spreader event. You got the freak show comedian Steve Colbert dancing with Senate Leader Chuck Schumer. I've seen Pelosi numerous times here in the Capitol not wearing a mask. When at the same time, this is all theater. It's all for show. And so you're ruining the respect that American people have in this country for even the most basic things that you think would not be politicized, and that is for healthcare in this country and people who in government work in healthcare. Now people are losing complete trust in the entire package because you're letting all these people cross the border, and they admitted everybody that just got through over the weekend or over the last week, these Haitians, they weren't vaccinated and they weren't tested for COVID.
That's absolutely true.
Totally
That's absolutely true. Even why I was sitting here speaking with you, and I know I'm going to let you go, I was getting pinged by Border Patrol agents left and right wondering what's happening now, what is breaking right now as I'm talking to you, Congressman, about what's going on. I guess, it's so gut-wrenching, and so many American people have come up to me. I know they must do it to you too. You're very recognizable, and they say, what can we do, Sara? How do we change this? How can they feel powerless. What can you say to the American people?
Every day it happens to me, especially when I'm on the road.
Right.
People come up to me and they raise many of these issues, but specifically these issues of the mandatory vaccines.
Right.
And and this is really troubling because this is not following the science. This is following their own political science.
Right.
So, we know, for example, if you've had COVID, especially if you had a very serious case of COVID, there's no evidence that there's any breakthroughs that I've seen. I'm sure there's one or two here or there. But for the most part, if you had COVID, people aren't getting it again. Yet, people who have had the vaccine are clearly getting it. And the other thing that I tell everybody about, because the Chinese are responsible for this virus, you have to take it seriously because people are dying.
Right.
And the key is you got to get to your doctor immediately and make sure that you insist on getting immediate therapeutic treatment, as soon as possible. I can't stress it enough. It drives me crazy because so many doctors that I work with that I know that have been advising me through this, because in another role that I have, Sara, I'm the ranking member, top Republican on the Intelligence Committee, but I'm also the top Republican on the Healthcare Committee.
True.
And it's driving me absolutely crazy that I have to hear from doctors who are saying, look, there's basic things out there that you can take. And Sara, I'm sure you're in the same boat because you've done a lot of travel overseas like me into very, to spots
Right.
that, don't have good health care. And what do they give you when you go on those trips? When I go on those trips, they give me a couple different types of steroids,
Cipro.
couple different types of antibiotics, exactly. And so doctors are saying, look, and then what they tell me when I get sick on the road, they say, look, don't worry about getting to a doctor first. Make sure you treat whatever. If you assess it yourself, treat it quickly, and then get to a doctor because early detection and treatment is the key. But for some reason, that's completely been lost now. Like nobody's saying that, and it's absolute. Well, I was going to use a cuss word, but I know you have a nice family.
No, it's okay. You can. I sometimes cuss on my family friendly show, and I have to apologize at the beginning of the monologue because I'm getting so irate. But you're absolutely right. When it comes to medical treatment, we almost lost a really good friend of ours out here in Texas with COVID. They didn't get that early treatment right on, and because they had underlying conditions, they ended up in the hospital. I don't even know how they survived the whole vent situation. They were intubated. But thank God they did. But you're absolutely right. If you get that treatment early, if you get it early on, a lot of people's lives have been saved because of that decision.
Yeah, and when I came down with COVID, and because I had been working with doctors, they had been telling me constantly, look, the minute you think you get a fever spike or something's not quite right, and you feel like you have the flu, make sure you get these basic treatments. It wasn't even the Drano and all the fake news narratives that they say, or the cattle dewormer, all that. It's not even that, Sarah. Just the basic stuff that as a congressman and you as a journalist, I know when you have these to-go packs that they pack up, and a lot of members in our military and intelligence, when you travel overseas, this is what you do. So why not have these basic medications that would do so much good that doctors are saying do good? Instead, you got Biden looking like a fool today, getting his booster vaccine that the FDA, is really questioning at best. I know they did approve it for supposedly 65 and over, but none of this is making, any sense at all. And in the meantime, as we speak, people continue to contract this Delta variant. They're getting very, very sick, and they're not getting treated. And by the time you get into this day 3, 4, 5, 6,
that's
7,
when it hits rock bottom.
Suddenly you have pneumonia. You have pneumonia, and you're in the hospital.
That's it.
And like you, I've lost a lot of people that I know who didn't get treated early. So
yeah, it's a tragedy.
It's just so wrong.
It is a tragedy because I feel like this is the decade of disinformation, or what we have seen over the last 5 to 6 years is a constant disinformation campaign that we are all fighting against. And it's so bizarre and it's so different, but it almost feels like, it's warfare. I call it information warfare, and it's information warfare on every level.
And I don't know if you watch this, if you post on YouTube or not, because I don't click on YouTube.
Yeah, me neither. But I
just what we're talking about right here. If this was to go onto YouTube or Facebook or Instagram, I know what they'll do. They will put it in there like these. Either they'll take it down, or they'll put in like this bogus, COVID-19 warning. To get the facts, go to CDC.
Right. It doesn't matter what we say. We could say, the doctors are amazing. They've healed. It's just because we're saying it, they're going to put a COVID notice on it. They won't even listen to us. They'll just put a COVID notice on it. It's a disinformation warfare from the beginning to end. And I'm telling you, without people like you, Congressman, representing us and fighting for justice, we would literally be on the verge of losing this nation, I believe.
Well, as I said, I know you're gonna wrap this up, and I started to say this earlier, but I wanted to make sure your audience understands this, that back in those dark days of 16 and early 17, if you didn't go for the Russia hoax completely and agree to write fake news stories, and if you just even asked any questions, you were basically relegated to as being a crazy person. And you, John Solomon, really were the first reporters to actually step up and say, no, we're going to call BS on this. We're going to challenge it. And I think at the beginning there, I was probably running 250, maybe 500 stories to one.
Right. You were.
It would just be, that Nunes must be a secret Russian agent. And then boom, 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 boom. There'd be hundreds of those stories. And then, you and John would write a story like, no, there's actually no evidence of this, of any of this Russia hoax stuff. And so, look, that's why you have a great fan base. And that's why, anytime you want me on your podcast, I'll be glad to come on.
I thank you for coming on this podcast. It's very rudimentary. I just moved into my home. I moved to the great state of Texas. I know you're fighting the fight in California, and that's where you should be. I have a lot of family there. I grew up there when I was very young. It's a beautiful state. It's an important state. It's filled with so many wonderful people. I'm always with Steve Hilton all the time. I'm backing Steve on the fight too. I know he has a great podcast focused on California. And, I just tell you, there is nothing more heartbreaking than watching what's happening in California, watching what's happening across our country, and just knowing that really for everyone out there that's listening to this, listen to what Congressman Nunes is saying. Listen to what he's saying when he tells you need to speak up. We have important elections coming up. We need to go to Rumble, not to YouTube, go to Rumble, go to Parler, start using these alternative means so that we can communicate with one another. Thank you so much, Congressman, for being on the show. I know I took up a lot of your time, but I'm so grateful. I didn't have enough time to ask the congressman about Afghanistan. I will the next time around. And I do have some questions for him about China. And for all of you out there who are listening to the Sara Carter Show, thank you so much. What I'd love for you to do is actually send me a tweet. Let me know what you'd like me to talk about. Let me know if you have any questions for Congressman Devin Nunes. And also, who else would you like on the show? I would love to hear your thoughts and ideas. You can either go to my website, sara8carter.com. You can find all my social media links there. You can also sign up for my email list there, which is very important because once you do that, you can get emails to me. I can actually read them. And then I can, listen to some of your ideas, bring some of those special guests on the show, and keep you actively involved because the show isn't about me. It's about you. It's about us. It's about finding a way to change our country and make it better and actually make a difference together. I know why our founding fathers wanted America's currency backed by gold and silver. You can see what's happening today, right? That's why they wanted it that way. Because after receiving my genuine gold and silver products, actually from Universal Coin and Bullion, I realized the importance of having something tangible, something that I can actually hold in my hand. UCB's president, Mike Fulgens, is a leader in the precious metals industry and was honored by his peers as the 2021 Dealer of the Year. Listen to that. He was the 2021 Dealer of the Year. He even showed me how gold has risen over 500% in the past 21 years, while the Dow and the S&P indexes have only increased about 200%. I also learned that Universal Coin and Bullion typically has lower bullion prices than their competitors. They provide free award-winning educational materials to their clients, and they make it so easy to buy gold. Look, to sum it up, UCB is easy to deal with, has great prices, and is respected in the industry. I trust UCB and you should too. That's why I will get more gold and silver from Universal Coin and Bullion. Give them a call at 1-800-UCB-GOLD. That's 1-800-UCB-GOLD and tell them Sara sent you. Or check out their website at universalcoin.com/Sara. That's 1-800-UCB-GOLD. Guys, thank you so much for being a part of this show. I'm here in the great state of Texas. I've had some amazing experiences here over in just the last 3 to 4 days. It feels good. It feels good to be back in America, to have my feet planted firmly on the ground and not sinking in the deep, muddy swamp of Washington, D.C. I did love Virginia. I'm going to miss it dearly, but I'm ready to start this new chapter of my life with my husband and my family here. And, there's nothing better than going to a restaurant or, being outdoors or being in a new place and having someone say, hey, let me help you out. I can tell you where you can go get this, or I can help you out with that. Or if you need someone, just let me know and we'll be there for you. And that's the way it's been here in Texas. You've really welcomed me. I feel like I'm at home, and I hope I can give back what you've given me all these years. Again, thank you so much for being a part of the Sara Carter Show. Thank you so much, Texas, for my whole new chapter in my life. And remember, you can follow me at sara8carter.com. That's where you'll get all my social media links. Remember, here is where we're taking the story back. God bless you, and God bless the great state of Texas. Frank Ziller, I am so happy to actually meet you. Tunnel to Towers is an organization, a foundation that I am so proud being a sponsor for the Sara Carter Show. So thank you so much. I think it's remarkable that Tunnel to Towers really thinks about the family as a whole and these Gold Star families. What's that been like for you, dealing with the Gold Star families and dealing with the children?
We have thousands, tens of thousands of volunteers all over America that help us put on events all over. But most importantly, our big event in New York every year where we retrace my brother's final heroic footsteps, always the last Sunday in September. We'll have 40,000 people this year. And we bring all these Gold Star families in, fallen first responder families, and catastrophically injured service members and their families in to be around each other all the time. They understand each other. They're going to help each other heal. You can't explain to anybody else what they're going through. And one thing we're so proud of, which is a new chapter in the foundation, is that we're going to be building a village in Florida, right outside of Tampa, 110 homes just for Gold Star families and fallen first responder families that have young kids, along with catastrophically injured service members. So we're very proud of that project.
T2T.org. That's T2T.org. It's only $11 a month. It's up to every single one of us to do our part to help those that were willing to give everything to protect us and our families.